In the war-torn landscapes of eastern Ukraine, the city of Pokrovsk has become more than just a place on the map. It has become a symbol of persistence, strategy, and survival. As days bleed into nights and the rumble of engines mixes with the distant echoes of artillery, one story slowly unfolds. The encirclement of Russian forces by Ukrainian tanks. It is not the result of a sudden strike, nor a reckless gamble. Instead, it is the outcome of careful planning, relentless pressure, and the sheer determination of a nation fighting for its very existence. Ukraine's armored units did not rush forward blindly. Each movement was measured, like pieces of a grand chess game. The tanks pushed ahead in calculated intervals, their steel frames moving steadily across the plains of Donetsk. They did not simply attack, they maneuvered, weaving patterns of entrapment around Russian positions. This was not about brute force alone. It was about cutting off air, supply, and hope. With every kilometer gained, the Ukrainian lines pressed tighter, forming a chain that would prove difficult, if not impossible, for Russian forces to break. The conditions on the ground told a clear story. Russian units in Pokrovsk had once been confident, their positions fortified, their supply routes flowing. But war has a way of stripping confidence away. With Ukraine advancing from multiple directions, those lifelines began to collapse. Food and ammunition, once readily available, became harder to deliver. Convoys faced ambushes, artillery fire, and drone strikes. Soldiers who once marched with certainty now found themselves cornered, their escape routes shrinking by the day. And yet it was not only supplies that faltered, it was morale. Inside the Russian camps, exhaustion spread like a shadow. The soldiers fought, but the pressure of being surrounded weighed heavily on them. They looked at their tanks, their weapons, their trenches, and wondered how long they could hold when the ground beneath them seemed to be slipping away. The encirclement was not just physical, it was psychological. Ukraine knew this well, and each strategic move tightened that invisible noose. The Ukrainian tanks advanced in unison, their presence a reminder that the city of Pokrovsk would not fall easily into Russian hands. Instead of clashing head-on, they isolated pockets of resistance, forcing Russian troops to fight in fragmented groups. What once was a cohesive front line dissolved into scattered positions, vulnerable to coordinated strikes. Ukraine's strategy was clear: avoid unnecessary losses, apply constant pressure, and let time and tactics weaken the enemy. From the skies above, drones painted the battlefield in real time. Each movement was tracked, each Russian retreat recorded. There was no room for surprise anymore. Ukraine had eyes everywhere. This technology gave them an edge, but it was their discipline and patience that turned that advantage into victory. Rather than chase after fleeing units, the Ukrainians chose to strengthen their hold, ensuring that every captured ground became a fortress from which the next push would begin. Meanwhile, inside Pokrovsk, the situation grew dire. The sound of Russian artillery still echoed, but with less rhythm, less certainty. Their barrages were no longer coordinated. Ammunition was dwindling. Trenches once filled with soldiers grew emptier by the week. What had once been strongholds were reduced to fragile shells of defense. The Russians fought back, of course. They resisted every inch of Ukrainian progress. But resistance without supplies, without reinforcements, without a clear path forward, was a fight destined to break. Ukraine's tanks pushed closer, their engines roaring like thunder across the open plains. Each advance was not just a movement of steel, but a statement of resilience. For months, Pokrovsk had been a contested zone, a place of blood and uncertainty. Now it was becoming a stage for Ukrainian strategy at its finest. The encirclement was not just a tactic, it was a message. To Russia, it said, "Your advance stops here. Your power has limits." To Ukraine, it said, "With discipline and unity, we endure. We fight back, we reclaim." And still, the Russians clung on, unwilling to surrender. They dug deeper, built makeshift defenses, and waited for reinforcements that struggled to arrive. But every attempt to break free of the tightening grip met the same fate: ambush, fire, destruction. The Ukrainian tanks did not allow escape. They position themselves at critical crossroads, sealing routes and blocking paths. The circle closed further, like a predator patiently cornering its